Okay, and then I guess we just go away with it. So hello, everyone. The Left Design Festival. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to do this today. It's a bit intimidating because for both me and Tyler, even though we've done these types of things before, it's immensely hard to do a Zoom Q&A, especially when you don't have a nice live audience to provide you with questions and that sort of thing. But I'm really hoping, got a big list of things to work on. Tyler's an immensely knowledgeable person. Not so sure about me, but hopefully we can work with some cool stuff to talk about. But yeah, it's an absolute pleasure joining you all, even if it isn't live. I hope the future is good and that you have flying cars and all that. But yeah, we're really excited to be doing this. But I'm just going to sort of run away with it. Essentially, the structure today is Tyler's just going to be doing a very brief, after introducing himself, he's going to be doing a very brief little talk about the type of work that he's been doing for the Bernie 2020 campaign and his work since. And then hopefully it should just go through some fairly sort of conversational topic, things about design that I hope you guys will feel is interesting. But yeah, we're just going to kick off with it, I think. Tyler, tell us about yourself. What do you do? Who are you? Why should people care about you?
I'm not certain anyone should care. I'll start by saying that. My name is Tyler Evans. I am currently the design director for Bernie Sanders. Why I am here necessarily is due to my role on the Bernie Sanders for President 2020 campaign. I was the lead designer for the entirety of the 2020 campaign and have been serving in the design director role in the time since Senator Sanders suspended his presidential campaign. So in total, that makes it just a little over 2.5 years with Bernie, and have touched any number of projects, and I'm happy to discuss any and all of the above with you all. And I am happy, thankful, etc., all synonyms applied, to be here. Thank you for having me. Sadly not live. Today is the 15th for me, but when you see this, it will be the 16th, and it will be my son's 8th birthday. So happy 8th birthday to my little dude. And thanks for watching if you are making it this far.
You win the good dad points, at least. That's something you've gained. Okay, but so I guess a really obvious question to begin with is like, I mean, you had done graphic design prior to 2020, but and definitely for, as it seems, left-wing causes and that sort of thing, progressive causes, that kind of thing. But why, when it came to 2020, why did it have to be Bernie that you were putting your support behind? Why not any other candidate?
So in the immediate before working for the campaign, I worked at Our Revolution, which is the 501c3 that was started in the aftermath of the 2016 campaign. I had been with that organization for right at a year when the presidential campaign kind of started rolling. And, in working for Our Revolution, I was obviously all in, completely on board for Bernie 2020. And I believe when he announced, there was all of 2, maybe 3 people besides him running for president. Of course, it eventually ended up being close to 20. But my mind was made up from the get. I supported Bernie in 2015 in the primary and was hopeful that he would throw his hat in for the second round. So just from a personal standpoint, there was no one else that I could, envision myself putting not only myself but my family through the real grueling hours and dedication that it takes to work on a presidential campaign. And yeah, it was just the platform more than anything, the ideas that the senator represents and the person that he is and the amount of respect I have for him. He's really the only person that I would ever do a presidential campaign for in any kind of sense that I can imagine. We don't have a crystal ball, but we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, it still kind of stands today. He's the only one that I would do this kind of work for, and the kind of hours it demands and the toll it takes. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think probably later in the call, it'll be a good thing to talk about is the future, what we're going to be looking for in 2024. Who are the sort of like possibly left candidates that could be seen as some sort of successor, assuming he doesn't run. I don't know if he's got a third one in him, to be fair, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that later. But on the topic of your work for the 2020 campaign and also Our Revolution, do you want to stick some up now and just have a really brief chat about the type of things that you've been things you've designed, what you've done, anything like that. If you just want to bring that up for us, and we'll keep it as long or as brief as we can. But yeah.
Sure. So just a point of clarification with our revolution, my role was primarily social media. I did like 90%. I'd say, yeah, good estimation would be 90% social media, and then 10% pitched in on the design front. I was under the tutelage of Sam Adaramola, who is our creative director, and then Julia Griffin, who eventually she joined us on the campaign and was in the design team with me. And so was not the designer completely behind our revolution. So just point of clarification, don't mean to take credit for anyone else's work there. But yeah, in terms of the work, I can bring up some of my favorite stuff now over here. Hopefully that's visible. All right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what I suppose, just when it comes to all these, talk about what when did you come up with this? What was the aim? What was the target? What sort of campaign was it on? That sort of thing. Just keep flicking, I suppose. Just and also talk about your favorites. Which among these are some of your maybe most proud of, or maybe even that I suppose you probably wouldn't have chosen, but if you're not, or if there's anything you would have changed, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I did consider throwing in some kind of, some B-sides from the stickers and, the unprinted merch, of which there's plenty. I was going through this to try to compile, and I was kind of trying to whittle it down. And yeah, so the sticker that's up on the screen here, it was a sticker. It was produced as a sticker. It was actually the first printed piece of merchandise that I wound up designing for Bernie. The story behind it was, I believe it was the first Democratic primary debate that this happened. There's a moment where there was a lot of back and forth between all number of candidates on the stage, and there was some arguing over Medicare for All, and another candidate, I believe it was Tim Ryan, said to Bernie that he didn't know what would end up being in Medicare for All, and Bernie just cut him off and said, "I do know, I wrote the damn bill." And the internet went nuts and was chatting, as we do during debates, was chatting with the digital fundraising team in real time, and said, "Hey, that would be a great sticker." And I designed this in I think 6 or 7 minutes and sent it over to them, and it was out in people's inboxes 10 minutes later. So
wow.
It was really no more than 15-20 minute process from start to finish, and we got approvals, and it went out the door, and it raised tons and tons of money. And people, as they did throughout the campaign, took this design and made their own bootleg, pin back buttons and t-shirts and all number of things. So people seem to like it, and it's still, I still see it on bumpers and vehicles around town here, which is always a nice kind of compliment. So
fantastic. Okay.
And secondly, the second big piece that wound up being produced was the bus for the senator's travels to the state of Iowa, affectionately called the Not Me bus. The side piece here, the gorgeous multicolored crowd with the senator silhouette here, was done by Aled Lewis, who I believe is native to England. He did the art for the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign and was so kind as to donate the files. And we had it on hand in our archives, and I was kind of looking for an excuse to use it again. We'd used it early on in the campaign for stickers, but I wanted to do something more with it. And the original design is like a square. It kind of, I don't know if my cursor's showing up, but the original cuts off right here where this first ventilation system is. So I just cloned all of these people and made it look more like an actual rally and slapped it on the side of the bus. And yeah, it obviously struck people's eyes as it was going through the snow of Iowa. So served its purpose, got people's attention. And then on the the front side and the other side of the bus, you can see a little bit more of the 2020 branding and kind of the more Bernie with the crowd, Bernie with the people. And that was something that was really important about the bus itself, was that I'm not really sure that anyone in 2020 was doing this, but kind of a theme of candidate buses prior to 2020 and in gubernatorial races and everything in the states is you see a lot of candidates put their face on their campaign vehicles, and that's not Bernie. Bernie is not someone who just wants his face on everything. So anytime that the senator appears on the bus, it's not just him, it's him with the people, it's the supporters, it's the campaign who make up the campaign. So it's only crowd shots and everything that shows up here. So we've got, I think this is an Iowa crowd here on this side. And on the back side, we have a crowd at the second rally of the campaign in Chicago. Bernie, very small here, and then just surrounded by supporters, and of course, you know, the volunteering ask of texting to get involved with the campaign, and lots of little cell phones. So we tried to bring a lot of like the playfulness of the digital social media footprint over onto the actual physical bus itself. And it is the first and only bus I've designed so far. Remains to be seen. Yeah, fingers crossed. We want more buses, but you know, it requires somewhere to go to be able to make a bus. So
I remember on that
go ahead, I'm sorry.
That first design, of course, the bit, lovely multicolored crowd one. I remember being like a 16-year-old in college as a fan of Bernie Sanders. I think it was just after the results of the election being declared. I set that fantastic design as my phone wallpaper, and I had it like that for like years. It's my favorite, and I was so happy when I saw it on the bus, 2020, and obviously was even more impressed to be able to talk to you about it. So that was immense.
Yeah, it was beautiful. You know, it was the little bit of just kind of a side story. Because he had donated the art, there was no expectation for us to really like reach out and like get permission, because we technically owned it from the legal standpoint. So and being a fan myself of his work from 2015, 2016, I followed him. This is him being Alid. I followed his work online, and it reached him pretty quickly, obviously, that this was taking place. A piece that he designed 5 years prior is popping up on the side of a bus, and he was into it. Thankfully, I was, didn't want to hear that he wasn't, he was done with Bernie. Yeah, exactly. Something like that, or was like mad that he donated or whatever. But he was excited, and we ended up connecting over it. So I actually ended up getting to talk to him. But something about Alid, he's a monster of an illustrator, and anyone who knows his work, is especially as it pertains to Bernie, that's one of 10 just iconic pieces that he designed in support of Bernie. And he does some incredible work, and I think they're still available as prints in some capacity on his web store or something. So if you're not familiar with Alid Lewis and his work, not just for Bernie, but in general for progressive politics, they're out there, and there's some wonderful stuff to look at. So
sorry to interrupt you before you go on to the next one. No. But on the topic of your predecessor, and also picking up designs from previous campaign, how easy or hard or difficult did you find it in sort of adapting to a mold that had already been set? Did you find that you were mostly working on stuff, mostly working with sort of design elements which had come about 4 years ago, or was it were you keen to keep it even more kind of original when it came to 2020, keen to include as much of your own stuff in there as possible?
Yeah, it was definitely a conscious effort to kind of divorce the two, because they were, there were some different ideas in the 2015, 2016 campaign, and it was, it didn't have the steam right off the bat that the 2020 campaigns did. So there was definitely a conscious effort on the part of myself and my immediate supervisor, Georgia Park, who is she held the keys to the Bernie designs before I took the mantle. She worked for him in the Senate office, and so in the initial outset of the campaign, first few months, any brand checks kind of went through her, and kind of had to get her okay. And obviously in the Senate side, had a very strong visual presence identified already. So it was more so, with the bulk of our work taking place online on the design team, it was more trying to kind of carry that expected visual medium through into the 2020 effort. So we were picking up where she left off, just in the Senate office. And so we were kind of fortunate that there was kind of already a pretty good foundation of how to apply the brand and just kind of the visual standards that are expected out of like what people see from Bernie, and kind of keeping that visual consistency key, because consistency, excuse me, is such a key character association with Bernie. So that was something we were very cognizant of, that, you know, the consistency and visual from piece to piece all kind of came back to how people ended up feeling about Bernie. Because in order for it to be true to him, it had to look, you know, there had to be a consistency to it too. So I don't know, I kind of rambled off on that. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, we definitely didn't really look a whole lot back at the 2016 stuff. The share graphics, a lot of the visual stuff was really, really different. There was a completely different color palette. I mean, it was still red, white, and blue, and like a little bit of yellow, which isn't like the most groundbreaking color palette for United States politics, but it was, you know, we used different shades of red, white, and blue, and we were definitely very sensitive if, you know, it being the same logo, if like the 2016 version of the logo would show up, we would immediately, from the design teams or the social team, someone would respond like, this is 2016 logo, not this isn't the 2020 logo. And people were like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, well, it's 2 shades lighter than what we actually use now. So minor differences, but we were still very cognizant of like, we wanted to do our own thing from start to finish with our design stuff. So
fantastic. Yeah, well, keep going. What's this one about then?
So this was an unused poster for the Queensbridge Bernie is Back rally with the famous or the infamous, I don't know what you would say here, but with the endorsement from Representative Ocasio-Cortez. It was also the event with Michael Moore, Senator Nina Turner, tons of people, thousands and thousands of people in person by the Queensbridge right here that is visible on the poster. And not sure why we didn't use it, but I still love this thing, and hope to print it eventually for my safe hanging in some space. But yeah, it was, you know, obviously the weeks before the senator had a health scare on the campaign, and this rally was kind of his public reemergence into the campaign, and there was a lot of energy and just a lot more, like there was just this surge of joy and exuberance about him coming back onto the campaign trail. And so, you know, really the goal here was not only to express that joy and the excitement and, you know, the ultimate like Americanness of Bernie and what he's proposing and the continuation of the Democratic promise, but also to kind of give a little bit of tribute to the city in which he was going to be speaking and where he and his family are from, which is New York. And so these big bubble block letters with these thick shadows were actually kind of an homage to Run DMC and a little bit of their visual cues, at least in the typographic sense. And then, you know, the whole thing is kind of a love letter to Bernie's roots and the city that his family is from. So yeah, that's the story of that.
I remember, I think it must have just been after this rally, there was a really, really fantastic shot someone had from, I think maybe from a drone or somewhere out by at least, of, you know, this, you were talking earlier about, you know, sort of being keen to include, you know, big crowds as the focus of a lot of the designs, in that it was about them and not Bernie. Yeah. But there was one particular shot of this, you know, you had the bridge in the background and, you know, the tiny Bernie just at the bottom, but then this immense like wave of people just sprawled out below. It was one of my, it really, you were talking about the kind of exuberance of it, and that was what it exactly was. It felt like it was a lovely, lovely shot. I'm glad that, you know, in this poster you had like a little bit of a callback to that. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I'm very sad it's not used.
I mean, it's available on the internet to look at if if nothing else, you know, if we didn't end up printing it, you know, it's people know it's out there, and that's all that matters at this point, I guess. So moving right along, to quote the Muppets, this here is yet another sticker that was produced in the immediate aftermath of a debate. This, I think, was actually the last in-person debate before the field dramatically narrowed. This was the debate before the South Carolina primary. And there was, can't remember the exact specifics, but there was a little bit of, back and forth between the candidates about, who's fighting for who. And one of the kind of throwaway lines that not throwaway, but one of the more iconic lines from this rally was, will you fight for someone you don't know? And this was kind of another homage to that of, Bernie's fighting for you, for me, for us, for the people, and not the corporations, not the special interests, etc. So the photo is from his arrest from when he was at the University of Chicago during a civil rights protest for equal housing. And, I think this photo made the rounds initially during the 2016 campaign. So I don't think there's a whole lot of backstory that's needed here, but we did not actually have the full copyright permission to make these. So we kind of knew getting into it, like, we're going to put these out for people to donate and get this sticker, but like, we knew we were going to get immediately like cease and desist. So we did it for like a brief window and produced all that we could. And then we inevitably got the cease and desist letter to stop producing these stickers. But, people were I think were waiting for us to use this picture in some capacity. So it was successful, and people responded well to it, as they do anytime when this photo pops up. It definitely kind of encapsulates Bernie and what he's about. And now we're kind of moving in. We're moving now into like the post-presidential campaign and to the general election in support of Joe Biden. So these are a lot of these are going to be for the posters that you're going to see here are going to be for virtual rallies. So we did a series of fighting for XYZ. Usually it was a state, fighting for Vermont, fighting for New York, fighting for West Virginia, Arizona, etc. So all of these states across the country. And then we started moving more into kind of more general topics. And we did this one on rural America. And this is explicitly a callback / ripoff of the work of Lester Beale, who did the iconic designs for the Rural Electrification Administration under President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And yeah, this is just an old photo of Bernie as mayor on a rural Vermont farm and wearing a super cool hat, and just colorized it and made it look like something that would be used during the REA days. So this was just kind of something I did for fun. We didn't actually end up, well, we did post this once, but it was posted once out of like, the not millions literally, but the many times that we posted to promote the rally itself that we had with some rural advocates, with People's Action and some other panelists, to talk about rural America and what we were fighting for in the 2020 campaign. And this as well was our final rally before the general election took place. And the fun thing about this is how many freaking people are on this poster. Because I think when this thing started, when all of these people were up for re-election or were running for office for the first time in the 2020 campaign, when one of them heard that we were doing this event, the beauty of it being virtual was that anybody and everybody was almost certainly free to join and wanted to get the vote out and wanted to talk to people, because in-person campaigning just wasn't happening in any real sense. So people just kept getting added and added and added and added. I think we started with like 5 people. It started off as like Senator Sanders, AOC, Cori Bush, Rashida, Ilhan. I believe Ayanna was like one of the first people. And then we got Jamal, and then we got Roe, and then we got everybody else. And like, it just became kind of a, like, I mentioned Georgia Park. Georgia and I were just kind of laughing, like, are you going to be able to fit them? I'm like, I'm going to show you, like, yes, I'm going to fit these people on. And it just became kind of a challenge, like not only to get everybody on there, but to get everybody's name and title. And, it was definitely an exercise in type hierarchy as well as photographical hierarchy in terms of like your subjects and everything, and making it legible and still decent to look at. It was a challenge, but still one of my favorite pieces and one of the more fun rallies and events that we did with a ton of Zoom participants. If you can see, all of these people joined us via Zoom, so it was a technical challenge as well to pull that thing off.
I remember when I saw this one, I did shamelessly rip it off myself because I was having to do at the time work for my university Labour Society, and so I shamelessly stole the theme,
Yeah,
just having a bunch
of
of
course,
people on the background, and for our committee election. Yeah, I love this one. I think it's fantastic. It has a bit of a kind of like a Star Wars poster vibe to it, I think, almost, all the kind of faces kind of going. But yeah, I really love this one. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's Kevin actually shared pretty quick after that some freelance client he was working for had messaged him and sent this as like exactly what they want. So he also had a chance to do his version, and his is beautiful. It's, you know, all red instead of blue and red, so definitely more of like a kind of a crimson tide of color. But yeah, the fun fact, there's also, my wife just noticed this, like I have a physical print of this in my office here, and my wife just noticed like 3 weeks ago when I was framing it, that there's a check mark on this. So there's a check mark because they're in the ballot box. That's the hokey concept behind it. So I don't know if people saw that, but you know, just got to plug the check mark in the ballot box. That is the concept that we're working with here. So anyway, oh, good. Moving right along, we got the inauguration meme that everybody and their brother and mother and sister took and did their own thing with. And there's not much to talk about here rather than kind of the backstory of like how it all came to be. And that, like, you know, we were watching as a staff, all remotely, of course, we were watching Bernie attend the inauguration. And it was like, I think 5 minutes after they showed him on camera that he became kind of the star of the show. And it was like everything on the internet was talking about Bernie and how he looked and just his whole demeanor. And
the mittens.
Yeah, the mittens, of course. Like we were all like, the mittens have made their appearance before on the campaign trail, and like we were all big fans of the mittens. And when they showed up, we were just kind of talking back and forth, like, oh man, this is great. Like, of course, this is wonderful. We love it, blah, blah, blah. And I think like 15 minutes into the time of him being on camera, I had mocked up the sweatshirt that raised the 1.8 million for charities. I had mocked up the sweatshirt and sent it around, and it was kind of just like, oh, that's funny. Like, that would be amazing if we could do that. And then we just kind of let it sit for a couple of days, you know, and the meme just wouldn't go away. Like, it was like the internet just kept going and kept going and kept going. And like, I think Jake Tapper started showing the memes on his show as like a way of closing his hourly news segments. And like, it just kind of took on a life of its own. And our executive director at the time, Misty, circled back and kind of did the legwork with Getty to allow us to use this photo, because they owned the photo rights and everything. And yeah, we were able to produce sweatshirts, and the sweatshirts sold out in like 10 minutes on the website from like what we were originally planning to do, and like completely overwhelmed our print shop. And we were able to raise nearly $2 million for hungry families during the coronavirus pandemic. So we took a silly meme and used it for good, which is, you know, the ultimate. Yeah, it was the ultimate good deed won in the end kind of thing. So, and no, I have two more. I was going to say this is the final one, but it is not. There we go. So this is kind of a bitter, not bittersweet, but it has a special place in my heart of a piece, because it's a poster not only for Bernie, but for Nina Turner, who I worked under the tutelage of at Our Revolution. She was my boss's boss's boss. And in social media, I worked really closely with her on a pretty frequent basis. So to be able to combine the two was kind of a full circle moment for me. And this was just kind of Senator Turner is really big into Shirley Chisholm and the visual language of Shirley Chisholm and the design of the, the 1960s and the 1970s political leaders of America at that point, and or at least who the left considers political leaders of America at that point. And yeah, I was just drawing on the overall look, feel, vibes, etc., whatever synonym you want to use of the work at that point, and did my thing here. And I'm not very good at talking about it, but I like it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm just going to click and move on.
No, absolutely. I mean, one thing that's really, really evident from basically all the stuff you've done is there's like a very big kind of old school vibe to it. Especially you mentioned
Yes.
the, kind of being inspired by, like, I think Lester Beale, you said, and old sort of New Deal era design work. What exactly was the reasoning for that? Why, when it came to the Bernie campaign, was there not like a desire to go, sort of super, I don't know, not futuristic, but contemporary? Why was a lot of what you did reminiscent of 30s, 40s politics?
So there's the mechanical purpose to that answer, or mechanical reasoning to that, as to why we took that approach, and that we were at the start, it was myself and Julia on the design team for 6 months, and we interfaced with everybody, like every department on the campaign. We were in charge of just producing a god-awful amount of content. And so from a mechanical standpoint, I was very cognizant of when we were setting up our brand standards and just kind of the look and feel of graphics. Like, we wanted to be able to present cleanly and concisely, but also produce things quickly. And we didn't want to be weighed down by a brand that took, that we needed a lot of time to kern, or to just adjust type, or apply all these special treatments to photos. And like there was just a lot of we wanted things to be nimble, and that is achievable when you look at kind of the standards of design, and those standards come a lot in the political sense. To my mind, they come a lot from the 40s and the 30s, more in the late 30s and the early 40s and into the 1950s, and a lot, honestly, for us in the 1960s. The biggest references that we made on the campaign, it's changed a little bit in the post-campaign time, as far as like which campaign and which artists I look for now to kind of reference and draw inspiration from. But on the campaign, we were looking more often than not at LBJ's re-election after he took over from the Kennedy assassination. So his campaign materials were 9 times out of 10, if we had a question about, a type treatment, or, a piece of merchandise, a sticker, anything, we were looking at LBJ. And beyond that, we were looking at Henry Wallace, who was the vice president to FDR and was looking to succeed FDR in the years after. And his stuff to this day is still kind of ahead of its time. I think a lot of people can go back and look at Henry Wallace's presidential materials, and there's, for presidential stuff or anything, just general left inspiration, the way that they produce type and just visual ideas of political leanings is just unreal, and that they did it without computers. So yeah, we were looking for it from that standpoint, for the mechanical things, the mechanical leanings, and the ease of production just on the designers themselves, but also that we were looking to kind of give a visual cue for the viewer, of the ultimately the Americanness of Bernie and his ideas. And so the way that we wanted to accomplish that was producing things that kind of harkened back to, the ultimately the most beloved and American president and of all time, which is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And it's we were trying to ultimately say like there's nothing radical about Bernie. It's just what seems radical is that we're trying to return the country to the roots of what democratic presidents can do if they're actually acting in the interest of the people. And the way that we saw fit to distill that most of all was to go back and make things look like they were coming from, 1930s, 1940s Democrats who fought for workers, who fought for farmers, who fought for poor people, who fought for a strong social safety net. And so, yeah, that's kind of why most of our materials, especially now when it's, just me producing these posters, it's a lot of them are meant to look like they came out of an archive and just got scanned in. That's kind of the vibe that everything ultimately wants to aspire to. So
I think especially when it comes to the Henry Wallace stuff, I can't put it up on the screen, but I think the one you chose for the event we did in January, I think it's the lovely, it's just his neck Wallace at the bottom, and then the fantastic kind of red, yellow, blue colors. I think on a billboard, that, especially looking at that, immensely like reminiscent. Well, you can definitely see the big Bernie inspirations there, especially when I know you said that obviously you didn't do it, but the one featured on the Not Me bus, just the colors there, I think, definitely very, very analogous. I can see the comparisons a lot. But yeah, last one, let's go.
All right, and last but not least is this poster from our last in-person events for Indiana and Iowa. We held a series of town halls in Indiana, Iowa, and ended up going up to Michigan as well while we were there to talk to people about the reconciliation legislation that is still unfortunately being debated in the Congress at the moment. And just kind of the general vibe for this was, 1980s Nike is what we were going for here, and kind of a return to being back on the road and just getting out and seeing America and just expressing the joy of travel. And the blue and the yellow are just a nod to the Indiana Pacers and what a Nike ad would look like in the 80s if it were for someone on the Indiana Pacers. So not a whole lot of political inspiration drawn from this. It was just I was looking at a lot of design work from 80s New York and Northeast hardcore bands, and they drew a lot of inspiration from Varsity clothing brands, and just did killer work with typography. And so I was kind of in that headspace at the time, and just ended up accidentally using the Nike typeface in the process. So not a whole lot to say about it, but I was happy with the way it looked, and it went out the door looking like it did. So here we go.
Well, you don't hear many like political design people reference Nike as inspiration, so I respect that a lot. That's your striving for uniqueness. Okay, but right, so I suppose the big question is, we've talked about where the history and the past and so on of the Bernie campaign and things like that, but now that we're possibly looking at a future of presidential runs that don't include him or that kind of thing, where do you think the future of left design is going to need to stand? Where exactly, what's either groups, which groups should we be looking at, or like who are you looking to rather as like people that will carry the torch of left-wing design going forward?
I don't know that I would call out any one particular person necessarily, not to give a cop-out answer, but I will say that I think anyone moving forward in design for left-wing candidates is going to need to very quickly ditch the kind of corporate aesthetic that has kind of creeped into political graphic design as a whole. And I think that's kind of, I don't want to say I'm giving it too much credit, because I do believe in its impact and its importance and everything, but I don't think it's helping that that it's become fashionable to make your candidates look like a brand, like a piece of clothing, or something that could be on a shelf at the Gap. I don't find that attractive, And I don't think it helps Democrats, especially in the States, win over people of the working class, because it just looks like something that's unattainable. It looks like something that's not going to be in their life. So I think as much as we can think about those things in general is like, how does this speak to not only the voters that we have, but does this bring in anybody else? Does this speak to anyone new? Does this, does the visual stuff that we're producing and that we're pushing out into the world, not only does it speak to new voters, but is this honest? Is this who our candidate is? And that's kind of at the root of everything that I do for Bernie. Is is this something that I feel like if I was in a room alone with him and I had to show stuff to him, and he was the figurehead who signed off on literally every piece before it went out the door, like, would he be cool with this? And I think people should think things through a little bit more that way. And so, yeah, I think if we can start thinking more singularly about design in a political sense, and not comparing notes for 2028 presidential campaign versus 2028 fashion trends or 2028 magazine trends or any number of things. Like it has to live and be its own thing. So
you've spoken about it a bit there, but how exactly do political designers ensure that, like you said, design doesn't just become a fashion accessory, and that it remains it's a useful weapon in the fight for social justice, but isn't just being reduced to something that is fashionable and is quirky and trendy, but doesn't actually accomplish anything? How exactly do you? It's almost like you're kind of making yourself redundant. How do you make design that is attractive but isn't so attractive that it almost boils, that it doesn't serve to to further your ends? That's a bit of a broad question. I apologize, but hopefully it sort of makes sense.
No, I mean, I think we should just, in short, I think that the overall urge should be to capture hopefully the energy that is behind the campaign. And that feels different from campaign to campaign. In 2020, I'm not trying to just, I'm not meaning to say that we did it right and no one else did anything great. That's not what I'm meaning to say. That's not the subtext that I'm saying. 2020 campaign, the Biden general election stuff was good. And it was genuinely good stuff. Robin Canner did amazing work and really made Joe Biden's campaign finally feel like Joe Biden, and that's not something that we saw a lot during the primary. And to that end, also the Elizabeth Warren campaign was really great. There was, I think, in the January discussion you just alluded to, we talked a lot on the Bernie design team that, like, well, shit, the Warren team got to it first. Like we were very much looking at a lot of the original source files. There's an FDR poster that they ended up reproducing under the Elizabeth Warren brand guidelines that we were planning to produce a Bernie version of, and they just beat us to it. It was literally like our next big print piece, and they put it in their store before we did. So we were like, well, shit, cross that off the list, So yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of people that get this. I just think that, like, it's not too far in the rearview mirror of the corporate look and feel and vibe of, like, the very sleek Obama logo in 2008 kind of tilted people, I think, a little too far into, like, the sleek look and feel camp, if that makes sense. So yeah, and in the end, I think we should just resist the urge to sterilize politics, because right now we're in anything but sterile times. And I think the visual language of the moment we're in should be reflective. It should be a mirror, and we should just visually be honest about where we are, and not be afraid to be bold, because bold and radical is what we need, and bold and radical design is going to meet the moment. So
fuck yeah.
Yeah.
You've spoken a bit about the future of the left and sort of socialist movement more generally, but what exactly is the future now for the Bernie campaign, now that he's moving, like, away from presidential runs and that kind of thing to sort of wider activism and support of other candidates? Where's that going? Do you want to?
It's honestly, it's on the same trajectory. Bernie is in a very powerful position as the chairman of the budget committee. He is kind of, a required stop along the way of any and all social fiscal policy in the states. So I honestly, not to refute the basis of your question, but I honestly don't really see too much difference
Okay.
in between the mission of the presidential campaign for 2020 or 2016, or the Senate campaign before that, or the congressional campaign before that, or the mayoral campaign before that. It's all the same. It's to bring power and dignity back to working people. And yeah, the mission remains and the struggle continues. So I don't see a whole lot of difference there.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that more or less concludes everything. That's been an absolutely sort of immense discussion there, really. A bit intimidating. We had to pause the video for a second there, because after Tyler's like really fantastic little kind of speech on what design means and why it's important for all this, I thought all the various questions that I had prepared were completely ill-suited to moving on from there. But that was immense. We were just discussing actually that before we spoke earlier, he said he can only really talk about for 5 or 10 minutes about the design showcase, but ended up going on for like 40, and that was fantastic. So yeah, but yeah, it's been a really fantastic talk, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope this is just one of the many talks you're going to be seeing today. I'm really sorry that it couldn't be live, because I think we did have it would have been really lovely to have some some feedback from you guys and have some questions. But I'm sure, I noticed we said first the annual Left Design Festival, so I'm hoping this is the first of many. We'll have plenty more in the years to come. But yeah, Tyler, are there any kind of last, do you want to impart any wisdom onto us as to where you've spoken about where politics goes next, but yeah, anything you want to say before we wrap up, I suppose?
The only thing I will say, I will give 2 plugs. Firstly, if there is anyone who had questions and did not get to ask, or wants to know anything about the Bernie campaign, or had a question and is bummed to know that this is pre-recorded and won't be able to ask anything live or whatever, they can find me on social media. Instagram for design stuff is Tyler Evans Design, and I check DMs there if anyone has questions. I also post a bunch of stuff for from the campaign and just active stuff, and there's kind of some B-side material, unused stuff that's over there too. So yeah, that's a way to reach out to me. And then on the other side, on the political front, I would just say that if you live in the United States and you want to help the left and use design to do so, you should join the Democratic Socialists of America. There are gazillions and gazillions of chapters, and there's a really great, robust national design network. And if you live in a major city, there's probably a great local design network for any number of purposes, actions, lit, door knocking, anything like that. They need your help, and effective propaganda goes a long way to help socialism in real time and on the municipal level progress and help working people. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for that. It's kind of where I started doing more fulfilling left-wing political design work, was in the local Metro DC DSA chapter. And it introduced me to a lot of people, and just great friendships that I still hold very dear. So join your local DSA is all the other thing I would say.
Fantastic. I suppose I'll do some plugs as well if I've got the chance. A big thank you, really. I've done very little in organizing this event. I just turned up and talked to Tyler for 50 minutes, so it has been really lovely. The person really responsible for organizing a fair chunk of it, I think, has been Kevin Kennedy Ryan, of course, of Labour Party graphic designers. If you whether you're it might be that you've known about this group for a very long time, or you have just joined for this first event, but either way, they do some really fantastic stuff. Labour Party graphic designers. If you are, as Tyler says, a designer interested, of the left, if you're a socialist, if you're a trade unionist, whatever, and also if you're in the UK, but even if you're international as well, they do art packs every single season or so. So if you're interested and you want to submit some work for people to see on any sort of theme, whether it's like unemployment, whether it's housing, whether it's green space, that kind of thing, I can't recommend enough for you guys to check those guys out. Twitter at Labour Design, I think it is, and just go and send some designs to them because they're really lovely dudes, and follow them as well. You can follow me as well if you'd like to. I think you might as well. I'm at Felix Barrow on Twitter. I'm an unemployed student. I don't really know much about design, but I enjoy talking about it. So you can DM me as well if you really want. But yeah, that's more or less everything. Thank you so much to everyone and anyone who's joined us. I don't know how many people that is because, of course, it's not live, but it's been really lovely. I've really enjoyed chatting, and I'm hoping, as I said before, this is the first of many, and we get to come back in 2022, hopefully with even more people, even more guests, and do a series of even more fantastic talks. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, and I hope you have a really, really fantastic day. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you very much.